RetroGaming Radio 2005. Keep it retro. Welcome to RetroGaming Radio. I'm Shane Armando, your host. RetroGaming Radio. RetroGaming Radio. Today, Wednesday, another game based on the Quake 2 engine.
Kimberly, come in. Are you okay?
You're now listening to RetroGaming Radio. RetroGaming Radio.
And you're listening to RetroGaming Radio.
Welcome to the program. RetroGaming Radio 2005. Shane Armando, Bryan Smith behind the keyboard. Keep it retro.
Hello everybody, welcome to the September 2004 edition of Retro Gaming Radio. We are now in year 6 of our show. It just seems like yesterday we were talking about the IDSA and exciting new MAME releases, and here we are on our 6th year. We started in 1998. We're still going strong in our 2005 broadcast year. Very exciting. New intro, new Classic Gaming Expo, new interviews, all new and fresh right here for you. This month we have exciting stuff for you. Of course, the CGE 2004 wrap-up segment. We've got our regular Bits and Bytes. We have an interview from last Classic Gaming Expo that somehow slipped our schedule here. Steve Woita, the developer of the 2600 title Squadron, Taz, and some others. Really great interview. We'll have that for you this month. We are going to have our editorial commentary. We are also going to take a Retro Gaming Radio insider look on the Odyssey 2 game console. Very exciting for us. All this, much, much more this month. Year 6, Retro Gaming Radio. Stick around. While I was recording this month's Bits and Bytes, I kind of got an epiphany. I had an epiphany and I realized, I think, what my problem is with modern gaming. There's a lot of point-counterpoint scenarios in this. I'm not going to make this a really long editorial commentary because we've got a bunch of commentary in the Bits and Bytes segment, and, frankly, it's a long show already. One of the things that I hear time and time again about modern games is you gotta give it a chance, right? That's what you always hear. When I was dissing on Halo a few months ago, God, maybe it's been a year ago already, who knows, somebody said to me, you have to play Halo until you get to a certain part in the game before it becomes fun. And I said, well, that's kind of gay. I mean, shouldn't a game be fun, more or less right from the get-go? Shouldn't it be compelling and absorbing and bring you into the game, pretty early on? Isn't that the point? Aren't we playing games to be entertained? We talked about the American Farmer game, where games are becoming more like work. And I was talking to a coworker of mine, and he was talking about how he was playing some Ages of Empire thing. And, he was all excited about doing this, too, and I just had to shake my head. I guess he left, one guy alive on the other team, or on the other side, whatever. And he was going to spend probably the next 5 hours of his life building up around this one guy, never killing him, but trying to build up as much might and as much money and as much whatever the going rate is. Smithers, what's the going rate? Whatever the going rate was inside the game. But anyway, so he was all excited about that. That's what he's going to do this weekend. And it's like, that sounds like work, like the American Farmer thing. That got me kind of thinking, are video games becoming more work than they are fun? And I thought, well, what makes work? Right? Let's sit down and think about the definition of work. Work is something that you do for X amount of hours a day that you not necessarily want to do unless you're one of us lucky few that have a job you love. But you do a particular task that may not be entertaining, because if it was entertaining, it'd be a hobby. You do a particular task and get paid. And I was thinking, man, the more I think about the word work, the more and more I think video games are becoming work. Things like the American Farmer. Things like these all-engrossing sims like Zoo Tycoon. Right? I mean, you got to work to play that game. You've got to memorize who likes what rock and what sort of pen with what sort of foliage, and You know, I guess there are people that are anal and attentive to detail that like that sort of thing, but to me that's work. Now, when I made purposefully sure that I left the lion's cage in disrepair so that the lion would jump out and eat the people, right, that would be entertaining to me, right? Well, unfortunately, when the lion got out, if any of you have played Zoo Tycoon long enough to see that happen, basically you get a pop-up bubble that says, the lion got out and ate people, sorry, you lose, or whatever. And it's like, what? You cheap bastards. I wanted to see the lion maul people. You know, come on. That's why I left the cage open, right? But anyway, so I got to thinking about it. Part of what makes work is tedious amounts of time doing things you don't like to do. So I was thinking to myself, why should I do that in a video game? Why should I play Halo for 2.5 hours before it gets interesting? Why should I want to do that? And then I understand that after the 2.5 hours, you get a few hours that are really fun, and then they send you back over the same stuff you've already done. That sounds kind of like tedious, mundane hours of stuff you don't really want to do, right? So I got to thinking to myself, what's my time worth? You know, I've got a family, I've got a full-time job, I got several web projects. I got a lot to do. You know, I moonlight on the side to do web development work. And, you know, my time, I can tell you what my time's worth. My time's worth $35 an hour, right? If your time was worth $35 an hour, would you spend 2.5 hours of it playing Halo basically without being entertained to get to the good part? I don't know how many times when I used to run the old forums that I would hear people say, well, you didn't play it long enough. Well, damn people, how long do I got to play something? I don't have time. And the time that I do have, I could spend it making $35 an hour, or I could spend it playing something I'm not interested in playing that's not being entertaining so that I can get to the good part. Right? Why do you guys think I play Robotron? Right? Technically, the good part is wave 4 with the brains, right? All brain waves are good. All right, that takes me like 2 minutes to get there, right? 3 minutes. All right? This isn't just about instant gratification. This is not just about, you know, being against a compelling storyline. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a compelling storyline. Right? Nothing. There's nothing at all wrong with an immersive game. Nothing. If I have to play it 2 hours to get to the immersive part, I'm gone. Right? I think most people think that way. Now, here's one of these little controversial points that I want to bring up here. For the last couple of years, incidentally, since Xbox came out, sorry, did that come over right over the microphone? Did that tastelessness in my mouth come over? Ever since then, gaming has suddenly become a grown-up thing. Now, before Xbox came along, maybe latter PS2 life, right? You know, gaming is really for kids, you know? That's how everybody has viewed consoles in the past. And that's also what, incidentally, is kicking Nintendo's ass right now, because they're still marketing and making a game console for kiddies. And I don't want to hear Bryan, not my Bryan, but another local Bryan, bitch about how the GameCube is not for kiddies. I'm sorry. The GameCube and its games are geared more towards children. There's nothing wrong with that. There is a market for children who play video games, and I have no problem with that. Unfortunately, you know, Xbox, right? Because people live on graphics and gameplay is a secondary thing. But I'm not. This is not going to be an Xbox bashing session. I've already started. I'm calm down. Count to 10. That's what the therapist said. Unfortunately, the Roman numeral for 10 is an X. Doesn't help me out. Anyway, not to get segued out of there. So you got to ask yourself, what's your time worth? You know, since the Xbox came around, and there all of a sudden became a quote mature market for video games, games have all of a sudden had to become super complex, more buttons on the controller, more crap to do, not to play, to do, management, that sort of thing. And yeah, some people thrive on that stuff. I don't want to work when I play video games. All right. Now here's what's funny. And this is sort of the what I was trying to get to this whole time. If video gaming is becoming a mature market, in other words, they are marketing new and later games for adults or for mature audiences. I want to point out that mature audiences, like myself, like every friend that I have lives. They have a job. They have a family. They have stuff to do. Making a game take longer to enjoy is counterbalancing the audience that you're technically playing to. Your audience has less time, not more. If you want to make games that last 700 hours, go to the kiddie section. Those kids still have time to play. Those kids have no responsibility. Their parents won't let them have responsibility. They give them everything. They're not out there chopping wood to get their first car. Their parents just hand them the keys to the 5.0 and say, enjoy. You know, they've got time to play games. And I know they do. I know several of them. I know several teenagers out there, several young kids. That's what they do. That's their life. They go to school because they have to, because the law. I guarantee, folks, and this is just going to be a little segue into a personal section here. If parents didn't have to send their kids to school by law, I don't think our schools would have half the kids in them that there are, because that requires some effort on parents' parts to send their kids to school and to buy them school stuff and to go through all of that. I'm really disgusted with the lack of parenting skills going on in this country. But what they do is they get up, they play an hour on their game console, they go to school, and they come back and they play another 8 hours before their parents basically force them to go to bed, if they even do. Right? These are what I call the lifers. Right? These are the sort of people that when you go online, these are who you have to play against. Because I have a real life, and everybody that I would want to play with has a real life. Chances of me and all of my friends that have real lives getting on at the same time to play a multiplayer game doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. I tried with Diablo 2. We got like 1 or 2 gaming sessions in, and that was it. Why? Because we have lives. Right? And I'm not going to go play against these stupid lifer dig-it dogs that's all they do all day is sit and play this thing. I don't have time to get that proficient. I don't have time to work while I play video games. I don't have time to spend 3 hours waiting for, quote, the good part. And I think that as time goes on and people's lives become more and more harried, which they're going to, as more and more single parents are coming around, have less and less free time, right? And as these generation gimme people come into the real world where they have to have jobs, I think you're going to see a drop in the interest rate of these games that require so much of your time. I'm not saying you can't add value to a game. I'm not saying that every game should be over in 15 minutes. Of course not. But you need to give me a compelling reason to play the game, come back to the game, and finish the game. Don't make me play for 3 hours, because I'm going to get frustrated long before then. You know, I just don't have time to wait to be impressed. That's what I think I'm talking about. Larry Kaplan was talking about, and you'll hear this interview, I'm not sure when we're going to run it, but he was talking about Medal of Honor, the PC version, not the superior PlayStation 1 game that actually was a little bit different than every other game that was out there. And he said, and not to ruin the interview, but he talks about exactly what we're kind of talking about here. He doesn't understand the concept of working while you're playing video games. That's something that he enjoys. I haven't figured this out yet. But he does talk about how this particular game hooked him immediately. That's the way it should be. You know, that's the way it should be. You should be hooked on a game. It should give you something compelling, some reason to come back. Unfortunately, if I have to go back more than twice to a game to get to the good part, it's over. It's just truly over. You know, and I think as time moves on and as this mature audience, the Generation Gimme audience moves into that mature market, I think we're going to see a lot of changes. I think we're going to have to go back to the more initial compelling gameplay. I don't know. What do you guys think? Write in, let us know what you think. Post your comment on the show. What do you guys think? If you could be making $35 an hour instead of playing Halo, would you be doing it? Answer me that one. I'm just kind of curious. Maybe that's the real wild card here, why I do not have the drive or initiative to play modern games that I feel are largely fluff, that are largely designed to generate a certain number of hours listed on the back of the box. Maybe that's the whole problem. Maybe that's it. Write in, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Well, folks, let's recap the Classic Gaming Expo 2004. Lots to talk about. Very interesting trip, and it was a very interesting trip on many different levels. First off, of course, the location changed. We went from Las Vegas to San Jose, and that was a big change all on its own. New hotels, new policies, new showroom, new quirks about how do you get in the showroom, new places for the museum. Everything was different. It was very much like going to the first Classic Gaming Expo that you've ever been to. It was all brand new, even though you saw a lot of the same faces and you saw a lot of the same logos and all that stuff. It was familiar yet different at the same time. I don't know how else to explain it. Add that to the fact that many of the faces that we're used to seeing simply weren't there. Some people had other commitments. Todd Rogers had a family-type emergency that kept him from going. Conway Ho, which we usually get to talk with every single year, he was notably absent. It was very interesting, but we had fresh faces, like our new intern this year, Troy Tulu, who has now become a regular part of the show. He's going to be handling up, he's going to be our director of information, which means he's going to be handling a lot of the stuff on the back end on the website, making sure our links are up to date, handling our keyword indexing on the shows. He did a fantastic job of peddling the DVDs for us while we were notably trapped in a little recording room, but we'll get to that. So Troy did a very good job, and so we've decided to bring him on full-time with the great $0 salary that is popular after the .com days. Anyway, so we had some new faces, but let's go ahead and start from the beginning. You know, I flew up, and this time I flew to Bryan's house, and we went ahead and got a brand new computer all put together, brand new motherboard, all nice and ready to go for the Classic Gaming Expo. We tested it out, set up our recording deal. It was all good. We had our equipment. We had a couple of our regular equipment glitches. You know, our mixing board kind of took a crap, so we ended up using Bryan's professional mixing board. It all turned out good, but it was kind of a pain in the butt at the time. Anyway, we drove over. It was about 4.5 hours, 5 hours for those who are interested. We got over to San Jose, met a friend on the way, and we kind of caravan together, sort of like the old days, only not quite. And we checked into the hotel, which we stayed at the San Jose Marriott, which we will never probably ever be staying at again. Even if the show again is at the convention center, we'll stay at the Hilton. And there's a whole other story behind that. But anyway, we checked in, and we picked Troy up from the airport. Troy and Bryan had never met each other. So Troy was kind of a new guy to the whole mix. Of course, he had been a great Classic Gaming player. He's sort of been out of it for a while. Real life took precedence, and his family life sort of didn't allow the integration of Classic Gaming, so it was sort of fresh to him. But of course, he grew up. In fact, if any of you have listened to one of the original shows, the early, I think, year one shows, I had discussed playing Ultimate Wizard and keeping my roommate awake. And I do believe I named Troy by name in that one. If you've got the DVD archives or the archive CDs, check it out. It's the one I review, Ultimate Wizard. I mentioned Troy. So it was sort of a full circle. Troy and I kind of dropped away and went ahead and led our own lives, and now we're back at the Classic Gaming Expo 2004, and it's like everything was just the way we left it. The games are the same. We still have the same inside jokes. We still quote the same movie lines. It was very cool. It was very cool. And Bryan and the other Bryan and everybody in our little circle all just sort of fell together. So it was very interesting. It was a fresh start on many, many counts. So that's sort of interesting to bring up. So everybody got settled in. We didn't have adjoining rooms, but we had rooms next door, and we decided to go ahead and check out the convention hall, see how things were getting set up. The convention center is sort of a walkway. There's like a breezeway across from the hotel, and if you stayed at the Hilton or the Marriott, I think from the Hilton you had to walk outside to get in there, but the Marriott had a breezeway, which actually didn't end up helping very much because they locked the breezeway doors after a certain time, so you couldn't get from the hotel to the convention center if you were, working in the middle of the night, which is why we ended up not being able to produce a quick segment for Saturday night. It's all crazy. Anyway, well, we went there and we negotiated our booth, where we were going to sit. We sat right behind Twin Galaxies, which is always good. And, of course, a lot of the regular faces were already there. The Intellivision Blue Sky Rangers guys were set up. Atari2600.com. There was a couple of new people there. 4J's was there this year, which was really cool. We had a lot of diverse booths. Konami was right next to us, which was kind of cool because Konami got us traffic. They were showing off their new Gradius, I think Gradius 5 maybe. I had a lot of chance to go over there and look. It looked like a really nice 2D shooter with 3D enhancements, which is something that we're always talking about on this show. Don't dick with the gameplay. Leave the gameplay alone and just add 3D enhancements. And that's what this new Gradius looked like. So I was kind of interested in going over and checking it out, but I didn't really have a chance to. So Konami was right next to us, which got us a lot of traffic. We had the little living room thing. If you've been to Classic Gaming Expo, there's like a little living room setup where they have an old-ass 1980s TV with old-ass 1980s furniture with a 2600 set up in cartridges laying all over the place. It's kind of a neat little atmosphere for you to sit down in. One of the really big notable changes in this Classic Gaming Expo, which honestly I was very disappointed in, and this was really the only thing I was overly disappointed in, was that the number of arcade games that were present, unlike the last couple of years where we've had tons and tons of arcade games, we had maybe half the arcade games this year. There were some interesting ones, though. I will admit that they managed to score some interesting titles. There was an original Tapper machine. Or some of the other ones? A Frontline. When have you seen a Frontline, right? What else did they have? They had a few other ones that were rather unusual. They had a Pong and a Computer Space machine. But overall, there weren't a lot of Williams games. There weren't any Laserdisc games, I think, except for maybe Mach 3. No Dragon's Lair, no Space Ace. It felt funny. It's sort of like at the last minute they said, well, let's see what we can scrounge up. It seemed kind of weird. But instead, on the other wall, which this was sort of a mixed bag too, on the other wall were an entire line of gaming consoles hooked up to TVs. Everything you could imagine was over there. From 2600, there was even a Dreamcast and a Jaguar setup. Which, I don't know. I love the Dreamcast. You guys know I'm a huge Dreamcast whore, but there was something wrong, something evil about seeing a Dreamcast set up there next to the 2600. And Bryan even said something too later on, which means I wasn't losing my mind. Even the Jaguar felt not right to be there. They even had a virtual Game Boy set up there along with a huge bottle of aspirin right next to it. No, I'm kidding about the aspirin, but they did have a virtual Game Boy set up. They had a Vectrex. So it was kind of interesting to see, and people were playing these things, It was weird to watch people. Troy, I should have him record a bite for this. But Troy was noticing, because he had a lot of time to sit at the booth, because we weren't there a lot of the time, and I'll tell you why. But he said it was really interesting to watch the young kids and what they would put in first, because they'd cycle through the cartridges that were laying there. And he said it was very interesting to see what kids were playing. And I think that would make it a very interesting piece. Maybe Troy will want to produce a piece for us like that. But I thought it was interesting. We had the 8-bit weapon band was there, and that was a source of huge problem for us. Because the band, last year the band was located at the other end of the hall, which was what probably should have happened this time. But the band kicked on and off at odd times. It's not like they had a schedule where at the top of the hour they'd play for 10 minutes and they'd be done. That we could have handled. We could have arranged interviews around it. Hey, you don't tell Larry Kaplan that he can't come interview because his band's playing. So we couldn't be really picky. So finally we went up to the band. It's like, hey, when are you guys going to play so we can schedule interviews? And they're like, we just play whenever we feel like it. So it's like, oh, man. So we ended up having to take the whole recording studio and take it back to this little tiny meeting room they had set aside for press, which unfortunately there was nobody in it. But we had to go back there and record. Now that means we weren't at the booth a lot of the time, and I think that kind of hurt the DVD sales. And it also, I think, made it kind of uncomfortable for Troy. He was alone in this booth with nothing but a stack of DVDs in front of him, so he did a good job. But we did, amazingly enough, despite the fact that we weren't at the booth very much, we still managed to meet an extraordinary number of our listeners. When I say extraordinary number, I don't mean like, 1,500 listeners came up, but, we had a lot more this year. We had probably 4 or 5 that I know of, that we actually got to meet, shake hands, say hi, rub elbows, So it was really kind of cool to be able to finally have a chance to meet some of you guys. Because, we're really into that sort of thing. We love to meet our listeners. So that was really cool, despite the fact that we had to get chased into the other room. You'll notice that the interviews that we have in the room are very, very They're very clean. And you'll probably want that more than you'll want the noise of the other interviews. Even though there's a certain ambiance behind it, you don't really hear Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. You hear noise, from the group. There was a lot of interesting diversity in terms of the vendors that were there. A lot of times we saw in Classic Gaming Expo, we saw a lot of sales-related things. People selling cartridges, people selling T-shirts, people selling things you would expect to see for sale. And let's be honest, there was plenty of that there at the show. But there were some very interesting other things at the show. We had a couple of really nice booths set up for Moby Games, right? They're this big game database on the site. They were doing some sort of a T-shirt giveaway. We had some other fresh faces that were there. The guys that, and we talked about this on a Bits and Bytes a few months ago, I think, that were creating console hardware that that hobbyists could take and program console games on, and to learn programming and engineering and all that. The X Game Station, right? Well, we got an interview with their engineer for the show, and I think you'll find it's interesting. It's interesting what people come up with to support this unusual hobby that we have of classic gaming. There were people that were selling weird art, and there may be some pictures up. I didn't get a chance to really look close at the pictures, but there was an art booth that these guys were making classic gaming art out of stuff. Things like that. It was just like, wow, that's kind of interesting. And one of our regular listeners had set up a booth, and we were going to try to get an interview with him, but we simply ran out of time, that he took Adventure, 2600 game Adventure, and created a series of Alien games based on Alien versus Predator. I mean, he made packaging mock-ups, cartridge mock-ups, the whole bit. It was really interesting. Of course, Fox didn't give him any license to do this. He's just sort of doing it on his own. He's not selling them. I think he'd like to. I think he'd like to let people have it. But it was kind of interesting. That's the sort of weird, imaginative sort of things that were going on, at the Classic Gaming Expo, which was weird. Like I said, it was a different show, altogether different. Even though some of the same faces were there and stuff. Songbird Productions was there. The Intellivision Lives guys were there. All the people you'd expect to see were there. And I never did figure out why from time to time we saw puffs of smoke coming from the Intellivision Lives booth. I'm sure there's a tie into the Burger Time outfit that Keith wears over there. But anyway, too crazy. But overall, the show, otherwise the show went as you would expect. We had keynote speeches where they put panels together of Atari guys and Magic guys, etc., and they would have keynote speeches. Now, one thing unbelievable about this was, I think last year we had maybe 20 to 25 keynote speakers altogether, if you look at it. This year, I think somebody mentioned the number 70. 70 people showed up as alumni, as keynote speakers. Unbelievable. I didn't get a chance, of course, to sit in on any keynote speaks. I was busy interviewing these guys. But apparently the turnout of alumni was simply amazing. So that was the benefit of having it in San Jose. Everybody we talked to was like, we live 5 minutes away, we live 10 minutes away, we just drove down, blah, 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 It's unbelievable the number of people that are still in that area. They're still in the Mecca, the Silicon Valley. They're still there after all this time. When the dot-com crashes came and went, and the markets change, people diverse and they move, but these guys are still there. Fascinating to me. One of the big changes from this year versus last year, and we'll talk about some of the other things too, but one of the big changes was we got to go to the alumni dinner. And that was compliments. I would like to speak of Twin Galaxies, who got us into the alumni dinner. Thank you so much, Walter and Bryan, for that. But we got to go to the alumni dinner, and let me tell you what, if you don't get to go to this unless you're an alumni, you're one of these guys that comes and speaks, or you happen to have somebody to hook you up. So it's sort of like E3 used to be, when you got like special goodies for, being there before it turned into like an overall everybody gets to go thing. The alumni dinner was very elite, but it was elite not because of the lack of people there, but you got to hear speeches from the CGE guys talking about the new, the new location and the new philosophies. they gave out awards to some of these people, some of the alumni, like Ed Rotberg, who did Battlezone. You know, it was like being behind the scenes of a movie. You know, it was like this was the staging of everything that you were going to see over the weekend. The keynotes, the magic, the games. You know, when you saw, you know, Ed Rotberg go up there and get the award, you know, for doing Gauntlet, or I'm not sorry, my bad, not Gauntlet. When you saw Ed Rotberg going up for Battlezone, you know, you saw Steve Wozniak going up for inventing the Apple II computer, you know. These people are all peers of each other, and you have been invited to this age. It's almost like time stopped in here. These people were all together at the beginning of video gaming. And to go to a keynote speech gives you some sort of a thrill. I mean, you get that thrill. But to be here amongst all of these people, I can't even begin to explain it. Maybe somebody else can explain it that was there. Maybe people who have been there a few years. But for me, this was even better than my first time at E3. You know, I was sitting next to the guy that invented the Atari 5200 trackball. You know, he was telling me stories about these jukebox and pinball machines he maintains and does now, what he was doing. You could hear the Imagic guys. After the dinner, we broke up and the Imagic guys were like, hey, you know, nice to meet you. Hey, you know who you need to interview? You need to interview this guy. And he'd go over to the other table and get the other guy and bring him over and say, you need to talk to this guy because this guy's got the stories. You know, it was like, you know, like I said, it's like being underground at Disneyland. For any of you of my listeners who happen to have ever been to the underground city and under Disneyland and Disney World, under the theme parks, if you've been under there, you know what it's like to walk around with your mouth open. That's what the alumni dinner was. And well, we got to do sort of the after effect of it the last couple of years. You know, we got to stand outside and wait for people to come out. This is a totally different thing. It was almost like and it would end up being 2 hours. Poor Troy. We told him it'd be like an hour and a half, but no. For like 2.5 hours, you belonged inside the origins of video gaming. That's the best way I can explain it. And it was unbelievable. You know, they had a nice little buffet. Bryan even got me to eat the chicken. You know, it was a good thing. I'm a picky eater. But other than the alumni dinner, there was one other really big major change that I really feel that we should talk about on the CGE wrap-up here is the museum. Now, if you've been to the site and you've seen our pictures of wrap-ups from the last couple of years, you've seen some of the very unusual things in the Classic Gaming Expo museum. And the museum was this small room where people brought all of this stuff that you barely remember, or you saw an ad for but never really saw one, or heard about a prototype of but never saw it, right? They have all of this stuff in this room, you know? Original Revenge of the Jedi cartridges. I bring that up every year, I know, but I still find it amazing that some of that prototype stuff still is out there. You know, the Halcyon Laserdisc system, you know, there's like 10 in existence. There's one there, you know? One of the original prototype Atari 5200 trackballs is in there. You walk around going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. There's an entire line of all of those portable video games where they look like little arcade cabinets from Coleco, Frogger, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, right? No, and everybody had Donkey Kong or Pac-Man, and everybody wanted all the other ones, but like $60 a pop, figure the odds. You know, and then there they all are. A whole row of all of them, you know? You know, my Battlestar Galactica handheld game was there, you know. All of the consoles you've ever heard about, the Fairchild Channel F, the Odyssey, you name it, it was there. This year, wasn't so much that there was a lot of different sort of items in there, but the place was huge. I mean, I would say, just as an estimate, because I was only in there a couple of times, but I would say it was at least twice as big, if not 3 times as big, as any Classic Gaming Expo yet. The museum was someplace you could easily get lost for an hour, 2 hours. You weren't allowed to touch anything. You couldn't play with anything. But to see these boxes, to see all of this stuff. They had an SX64 set up and turned on. They had, it's crazy, you know. And all of these alumni that live right here in the valley are breaking out crap that they have had stuck in the attic that they'd completely forgotten about. And they brought it in here, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this thing even existed. It was unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. It was huge. We got a few pictures. I sent Troy in with a camera, but we didn't have a lot of time, and the reason we were separated from the booth, I wish we could have gotten more, but I know there are more pictures floating around the internet other than what we took. We weren't there to take pictures, folks. We were there to get interviews. And get interviews we did. We missed a couple of interviews that we wanted to do. Like, we had, most of the iMagic team ready to sit down with us. But unfortunately, the band and the noise and the other schedules of the other people just didn't work out. And it really sucks to have to say that we missed the iMagic guys. But we did get one of the iMagic guys. You're going to love that interview. Awesome interview. We got Larry Kaplan. We got Dan Kramer, who sent us an awesome email that I'm going to put up in our testimonials. We got some amazing people. We really did. And this time we got out and we got a couple of the other people, the Messiah Super Nintendo remote, wireless remote controls, the RF remote controls. We got their PR gal in to talk to us for a little while. We got the X Game Station. To me, the programmers are important. But this year we managed to get some hardware people. This year we managed to get some managers. People that, because you can only hear about developing on a 2600 so much, the pratfalls of that. But to hear about, shoveling Pong boards in, the sort of crap that they came up with. Why was there a problem with Pong boards? Well, there was. There was a problem with the Pong video game. You're going to find out about it in one of our interviews. There's a different perspective from the hardware and managerial point of view. And we managed to get some of that this time. And while it may not be as glamorous as the rock star programmers like David Crane, I think you'll find them very interesting. I certainly know that I did. And to get some of the people who are doing weird stuff like this X Game Station, I keep bringing that up. But when you listen to the interview, it's like, who would ever come up with something like this? And why? You look at it and you go, who the hell would use something like that? And then you start talking to the guy, and it's like, yeah. We got to talk to the Amiga Forever people, Cloanto. We had their representative come in. And they got to tell us a fascinating story. You guys, anybody who is even remotely interested in Amiga emulation, you're going to go completely nuts listening to the Cloanto interview. So much stuff. And it was great. The Classic Gaming Expo was very good. There were no Cruis'n USA machines set up. Konami behaved themselves. They didn't have anything up there that, they weren't trying to pimp some brand new Silent Hill 27 game. They were showing what I felt that they should have showed at the Classic Gaming Expo. Nobody really stepped out of line when it comes to classic versus modern gaming. They're starting to see a lot more Jaguar stuff. You're starting to see a lot more of, Super Nintendo stuff. And I think it's sort of a logical progression. Don't expect us to continue to be there when the show turns into a Nintendo show. Because, we might not be there. Because to us, classic gaming is not a year. It's not it's not definable by a person. If little Billy, who's now 12 years old, to him, classic gaming is the PlayStation 1. That's not classic gaming. That is his personal history of video gaming. Classic has a different meaning, and I think we've talked about this on another show, so I don't want to get into that, but a lot of people think that classic gaming will continue to thrive because classic is starting to mean something different for different people. I'm here to tell you that classic gaming is an era of ingenuity and innovation, and I think that that's never going to change. So that's important to notice. But anyway, it was a very interesting show, and for those of you who didn't get out to it, I really recommend you guys get out to the next one to see what this is all about. This was Troy's first one, and he was just totally stoked about going. And all the listeners that I talked to really enjoyed the show, even those that was the first show for them, or the second show or the third show. It doesn't seem to lose its appeal. So anyway, that's about it for the Classic Gaming Expo 2004. We had a great time. Again, thanks to all the listeners that came up to us, shook our hands, bought DVDs. You guys are the best. Couldn't do it without you. Anyway, look for more of our interviews in the coming months from Classic Gaming Expo 2004. This month we're going to interview Steve Woita. This was from the Classic Gaming Expo 2003. Steve's interview somehow got lost in the shuffle somewhere, and we talked to Steve at the show, and he was wondering why we hadn't run it yet. We do apologize, and we're going to run it right now to make good on our interview promises. Steve is responsible for the 2600 games Taz, Quadrun, and some others. He's also responsible for some other titles. Good interview. We really enjoyed interviewing Steve. and we enjoyed seeing him here again at Classic Gaming Expo 2004. Without further ado, here's Steve. This is Shane R. Monroe at the Classic Gaming Expo 2003. I'm here with Steve Woita.
You did it again.
That's okay. That's good.
Woita.
Steve Woita.
Steve Woita. That's excellent. For those of you who may not be familiar with who you are, Steve, and your contribution to the classic gaming industry, please give us a little background about yourself.
Basically, I got in the gaming business. I was at Apple Computer in 1980, right out of college. I worked there for a while. Worked there for a couple of years. And Bill Budge came into the lab, and he was like, what would be cool is to be able to play Crazy Climber on the Apple II. I said, oh, okay. So I rigged up a couple Atari joysticks, and got the hardware working to where you could multiplex in all the buttons in order to do the two joystick stuff. Then I come to find out that there's another guy on the other half of the building that's doing a 4-paddle device, and the Apple II normally only had, a pair of paddles. So 4 paddles, my 2 joysticks. We found out that we were each doing this stuff, and we took our ideas separately, both together, up to Serious Software, and they said, hey, let's combine them together and call it the Joyport. And the Joyport was this piece of hardware that added onto the Apple that allowed you to play like 4-player foosball, all these button-type joystick games. Normally it wasn't the case before. You had a couple of paddles and a button on the Apple. So, and I was currently writing like a 3D bitmap game for the Apple II. And so my friend, his name is Keithan Hyenga, got a job at Atari. He's the guy that I co-designed the Joyport with. And he found out that there was an opening there for another programmer. So he got me an interview at Atari. Apple said, go for it. If it doesn't work out for you, fine. Come on down. Yeah, they gave me a nice going away
software
thing.
That you were working for at that time?
No, through contract. And we got, apparently, and I don't know this firsthand, but I heard that Steve Jobs okayed the peripheral device to be let go.
Wow.
Through Serious Software, but I don't know that for a fact. That's what I've been told. And then, because he wanted peripherals out there to support the device.
Sure.
To support the Apple II. So I get this job interview at Atari, and basically they wanted me to program the 5200, is what I found out. Well, I take the job. On the first day I said, look, I don't want to program the 5200. I don't want to program that. I want to program the 2600. There's, 25, 35 million of these things out there, and I grew up on the 2600, and, when the Activision guys first put their stuff out. So we're talking about 1982, mid-1982 when I started at Atari. And my manager at the time, I guess I probably shouldn't mention his name. He's like, oh, fine. He comes back with a stack of manuals for the 2600 and literally drops them at my feet, goes, have fun. And that was it.
Damn. Harsh, just when you think people were being nice, someone's got to come along and ruin it for everybody.
Well, the guy thought I was going to solve his other problem with the 5200 programming issue, and I didn't do it. Spoiled kid. I was only like 21 at the time. So I got to studying the manuals, and we're sharing office. It was like 3 of us total, and it was pretty crammed. And eventually they moved me to the back, where there's like all this sheetrock, all this construction going on. And this was in a building called 275 Gibraltar, which is a pretty famous building for anybody that knows anything about all the 2600 stuff. It's where regular Pac-Man was done by Todd Fry, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And when I actually first went in for the interview, the first thing I heard was this whoosh, and it was this bullwhip. Howard coming down, playing character for Raiders of the Lost Ark as he's working on it, and I'm interviewing there, and he's got this hat on, and I'm going, man, this is not Apple.
How did Howard fail to bring that up at the meeting, at our interview yesterday?
Oh, man, I was like, this place is a nut house. I heard something about it, and then, Rob Zadibble, who I was just talking to recently here, made me an offer. Okay, so I'm at Atari, and they made me an offer. Zadibble said, hire that kid, because he saw what I was doing with the bitmap graphics and stuff, and I guess that's what made them think, okay, he's going to be good for 5200. So,
right.
Getting back, so I'm handed a bunch of manuals, and I'm like, okay, I got to figure this thing out. Well, my degree is in hardware engineering, and so it was great because on the 2600, if you knew the hardware, it really had to step up. It wasn't a programmer's machine. So. At that time, I already knew 6502 pretty well, and so I ended up off in the end of the building. They really didn't know where I was at, and I used Quadron became my learning game. I was just trying to see how to flash colors and see what I could do with it, and so I got into trying to make a game out of it, and they tested it, and it was tested with 10 to 12-year-old females who Now, these focus tests were very advanced focus tests.
Obviously.
And for 2 to 3 hours, I had my head down on the desk, and all I was hearing through the two-way mirror was, "It's not like Miss Pac-Man. How come it doesn't play like Miss Pac-Man? I don't see Pac-Man," you know? And so, and it was like a space-themed kind of game, and apparently it was the first one with voice. I didn't even know that when I was putting it in at the time. And so they tested it, and it tested very hard. So they figured, okay, we have a couple other games that tested really hard. Battlezone from GCC, which is another story I will lead into right away, and then Gravatar from Dan Hitchens. So our games were used in the Video Olympics type thing, sold through the Atari Age magazine, and they only made 10,000 of my game. And so now I guess that's kind of why it's worth so much. And
Right.
I've been told it's worth the most out of any finished game. I don't know. It's like I had 4 people offer me $1,000.
Wow.
And I'm like, and all of a sudden I started getting sentimental with it. And
Yeah,
I
can't part with it,
better
yeah.
not sell it, you know. So, yeah, and yeah. I mean, Atari was a great place. It was like I could do whatever I wanted because Apple. I just kept remembering hearing in the background, "Just come back if it doesn't work out." That's all they said. So I had this like free mindset to just, you know, I'm just going to do what I want here.
I can do what I want.
Yeah.
I do what I want.
So you're like, please piss me off. I dare you to
didn't
piss
care.
me
Can't
off.
piss me off.
Yeah, so I got to the point where all of a sudden I got a couple of games out, and all of a sudden, you know, I was in the club, and it was like, you know, I could do what I want, go out to lunch with these big guys here, you know, that have been doing it, and, you know, my job felt very secure. Well, then I wanted to get credit on the work. You know, Activision was, you know, the company I was looking at. It's like, they're doing it right. You know, they give credit and all that. And you know what? I want credit on the back of Taz. I want it on the back there. Nobody's gotten any credit on the back of these boxes. I want it. So I said, look it, the credit has to go on this box. And there was a guy named John Manley. I'll never forget. He was very astute to how the instructions were written that I wrote. He would come back to me with the artwork on the box. Goes, "Is this the way you want it, Steve?" He was like this good liaison for test and debug and packaging and stuff. And I go, "I want my name on this." And he goes, "Okay, I'll try to do that." And they said, "No, we can't put your name on the back of the box." I go, "Look it, I'm out of here if I don't see my name on the back of that box."
Damn.
You know, and I'm like, I you know. So I remember giving a report. There was this gal from the San Francisco Chronicle when I went to the CES in Vegas. We shared a cab. And she asked what I did, and I told her, and I go, "Yeah, I'm trying to get credit on this box, and I think it's going to happen." And she wrote up an article about it. It looks like the first Atari 2600 programmer at Atari is going to be credited on the back of a box.
Wow.
I have another argument with another programmer who says he's the first, and he's not. I compared the dates and stuff, but he loses. So,
You lose.
so I was putting my job on the line there, you know, in one sense, and so they did it. And, you know, it was great. A bad story that happened was Dan Hitchens and I were asked to do Battlezone for the 2600.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
So we were trying to make it look like the Vector game.
Right.
And Dan goes, "Look, Steve, I'm going on my honeymoon for 2 weeks. I'll be back. And, you know, just do as much as you can on it." You know, so up to that point, when he came back, we had the background scrolling. It kind of looked vectorish with black and white at the time. Then we're going to change it to green, you know. I walk by my manager's office and I see a finished Battlezone on the Atari 2600.
Whoa.
I went, "What is that?" And my manager, and I'll spare the name because I don't know if I should, you know, he goes, "This just came in from General Computing." So this is one of General Computing was in Massachusetts, I believe, and they did great work, and they kept submitting their work in, right? And they figured, well, let's go through the list of games that we know Atari's going to want to see. Battlezone's being one of them.
Right.
So we're like 1 month into it. I'm actually like 2 weeks into this game. Dan comes back. I tell him, because Dan was like my manager at the time, and he was furious. Dan Hitchens is the guy that did Gravatar, Berserk, all that stuff. He was like the guy that taught me a lot of the coding stuff.
Right, right.
2600. And so that was its own scene. I think he got so upset that I never even heard about it. It was behind closed door stuff.
So that crappy version of Battlezone was not your fault.
The crappy version is not your fault.
I never played it. Is it bad?
We asked.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
We asked Ed Rothberg.
Oh, that's got to ask.
Yeah, that's got to ask. I said, if you had to say like what was your favorite and least favorite home version of Battlezone, 2600, Worst version ever.
Yeah, because at that time...
Well, I mean, other than the fact... I mean, I told him, I said, well, wait a minute. Okay, so it's not graphically impressive. What about the gameplay?
Right.
I mean, how about that? He's like, no, it's still the worst.
Yeah, no, I mean...
Well, here's the thing, too, is that Robot Tank came out before Battlezone. So, Battlezone's kind of like a slap in the face because you have Robot Tank for the from Activision.
Right.
That seemed, it felt more like Battlezone than Battlezone felt like Battlezone.
That probably would have been a better license then. Just get it right from Miller.
Yeah.
Alan Miller did that one, right?
Yeah.
So, so we see this and it's like, okay, that's it. I'm going back to original stuff. I will not touch anything that can be, done on the outside.
But you guys had such power there. I love that. I mean, individuals don't have power like that anymore.
No.
It's fascinating to be able to say that.
It's been broken down in such a way that with the console market, and you guys have been hearing this to death, I'm sure. That
oh, no, we like hearing it more. Keep going.
It's like, I was at 3DO, and I left that company to direct a bunch of game developers in the web area, which was a very interesting move on my part. This is before 3DO caved in, the most current 3DO, right? Which is Chapter 11 or something. And I'm like, what are all these people doing coming out of this meeting? I think I estimated 60 to 70 people. It was a meeting for Portal Runner. The game Portal Runner, which is the female, Sarge gal. One game, PS2 game, and it occupied 60 or 70 people.
Wow.
Damn.
And right when it came out, boom, $20.
Wow.
Speaking of $20, no, I'm just kidding.
We'll segue to your game.
You know, because we only have like about 10 minutes left.
That's cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Unless you please want to stay a little longer and just...
Yeah, sure, you can stretch it. I'll sneak into the other meeting.
Okay.
So, where was I at?
Please don't stop talking.
Please don't stop talking.
Where was I at?
You were talking about Battlezone. We got into the Battlezone screw off on your end.
I have a question with your version. Had you gotten the graphics to look remotely similar? Because how there's a floating Tempest.
Yeah. Carl Meninsky did that one.
Were your graphics looking kind of like Tempest?
We're trying to go that way. We're trying to go vector as much as possible. It was probably, I think I had it going as fake vector. $20 you buy it.
Go ahead and plug it while you got a chance.
A game for the PC. Kind of a puzzle, easy to pick up thing.
Let the man hawk his wares.
Hawk your wares.
You hawk your wares. We can continue the interview.
Signed copies. These are all I've got left. But.
Tell people what
$20.
Tell people what you're selling. What the name of the game is.
Oh, click them.
And what's the object of the game?
The object of the game is to clear the pool balls out. They grow from the left side to the right, and you try to strategically select what appears to be the most balls on the screen of the same color, like 2 balls. Select them all, then click on the cue ball, and that gets rid of all those, and they collapse back.
Right.
And once you leave them on there too long, and they get over to the far right, this yellow box will start to flash as you're approaching game over. If you can get all the balls out of that column, boom, that'll shut off that timer again. So it's this tug-of-war thing. So
and where can people get it from?
BigFishGames.com.
Can you spell that?
Just so I have it verbatim here. BigFishGames.com.
Okay.
Cool.
$20.
Thanks. Actually, yes, it's $20 for the download. And
okay. Is there like a shareware on the site where they?
Yeah, if you like it, then you
buy it.
And hopefully will send me $20. I don't have to get a real job. So the whole deal is to avoid the real job. The real job is where you get a cubicle. And you sit there and you go, oh, not another 2 years of this.
Right.
That's all it is. It's like I can't do it anymore. Or the interviewing, 1 month of interviewing. Okay, show us how to transform a 3D cube. I'm like, come on, man.
Are you seriously asking questions like that?
Yeah. Really? A certain company, a very famous company, wasted my time for 1 month. I brought in all my games, my listings, had meetings with all our programmers, and then it ended up being this, then these 2 programmers, and they're here at the show. One of them is. Just wanted to mess with my head. Just you know how it is. They like to do tug-of-war with the brain. Put your brain out on the table, splat, put some probes in it, and go, let's either impress this guy or see if he's an idiot or I don't know what it is. And start asking me, okay, how do you do this and how do you do that on the PlayStation 1? I'm like, first of all, if you guys are doing that right now and not using middleware or whatever, you're going down, So there's a lot of, it's just...
But maybe they were picking your brain so they didn't have to pay you, but you could run off with your ideas. And next thing you know, you're seeing your codes in somebody else's game.
Come to find out, there was like 30 other people that definitely should have got the same position that told me the same story afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was, yeah. I just, the whole interviewing thing is, I'm like, I'm getting to the point, and I don't want it to sound arrogant, but if you don't even know what I did, if you didn't even do your research, I'm done.
Yeah, they should be begging you versus you going and
I don't want to say that, but I mean, there should be some sort of respect.
We agree.
It's you know what it sounds like. It reminds me of when you're in a corporation, and basically like on Office Space. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie.
Oh, I love it. I need to watch it like now.
They basically bring you into the office and say, "Why should we keep you?"
Right.
Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, you're my boss. You should damn well be knowing what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Why should I have to justify to you? You should be doing your job, being my manager.
Right. And the fun thing I'm having right now is like doing these download games. David Crane's doing the same thing for Skyworks, which is one guy responsible for what's going into the game.
Right.
And he may not necessarily be the whole person doing it. There's other people doing the artwork.
Well, sure.
My wife helps me with the artwork and whatnot. But, there has to be a gatekeeper or a coffee filter to filter the ideas and make sure the game plays right. And not feel bad telling people, it's hard to tell, like, you give me an idea, and I'm like, okay, it's not good. I got to figure out how to tell you that without offending you.
Right.
And a lot of people can't find a way to tell people that, and a bad idea may get in. A bad idea for that game. It may be a good idea somewhere else. It's just not the right spot for the idea.
I think a lot of people that work on video games now, they're not game developers. They've never developed video games. They don't know what it takes to do what you and all of these alumni have done, which is been responsible for every aspect of a game. Not telling them exactly what to do, but giving them the guidance to, like you said, to funnel that into the parameters of the right idea.
Right.
You got games being written by committee. Yeah. A good example, a friend of mine who works for, I can't even know if I should say the company, but he's basically on a PlayStation title. And the guys walked in 2 weeks before Gold and said, add multiplayer support. Well, I got 2 weeks. Whatever you can put in there. Oh, hell no. That's not how you write. That's not how you make video games. You guys would have never done anything like that.
God, there's a game called Waterworld for the Saturn. No one's really seen it. It's Gold. It's Gold Master. I've got a copy of it. It needs to get out there somehow. And
that could be arranged.
I was working at Ocean, who bought the Waterworld license. Jason Plum and I did the Virtual Boy version. The Saturn version is just a bigger, fatter version of that with a lot of the dirty, cool-looking bitmap, texture map stuff going on. I'm really sad that game's not out there because it really plays well. It's like a combination of Star Castle and Asteroids casted in 3D, the way it plays where you're rescuing people. And
Half-Life for the Dreamcast can get leaked. I'm sure that could get leaked too. Or are you talking about a legitimate?
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure we covered that.
And that needs to be okay with Universal, which I believe owns Waterworld, but I'm not absolutely sure. They were very good to work with when I worked with them.
Well, that's good. I was going to ask you about that in a later title here, but.
And then now Infogrames is Atari. That's ironic. So they own my stuff again. So hopefully they'll find it in their hearts to let it go and get it released. Because it got, it's done.
Oh yeah, that was the same with Half-Life for the Dreamcast. It was done. Gold. They pulled. They were ready to box it up and ship it, but
I'm like, sell it for the soundtrack and say there's a game on track too. It's like the soundtrack was amazing. I helped guide what kind of music we wanted in there. We went to the studio. It was phenomenal to watch this.
So that's exactly what I'm talking about. You got to go there and be part of that.
Yep. Yeah.
I swear, it's so. I think games are built so modularly now that nobody knows what's going on.
Here's the deal. Maybe I may be off on the numbers. If it takes more than 5 people to build the product, cancel it. Just cancel it. Some of them get out there. They're good. Grand Theft Auto is awesome.
There it is again.
Well, I do like it.
That's the universal accepted good modern game from everybody. It's a great game.
My dad's like, why don't you do a game where you're shooting people, popping their heads off, blood squirting out? And I go, Dad, I don't want to do that. We have my folks over. I go, Dad, check this game out that I'm hooked on. He goes, oh my God, as I pop the guy in the head, It's like,
I'm ashamed to tell you this, but I've said it on the air, so it doesn't matter. But my 12-year-old daughter is a Grand Theft Auto 3 whore. I mean, she
Wow.
will play that game hours. She's finished it. I haven't finished it yet. She's finished
I'm
it.
halfway through the second one.
And she
That's
loves
amazing.
it. But you know what? She never has a skew of reality going on. She's a down-to-earth girl that can take that sort of thing. But to have a female player, a young
That is
female player
rare. I only know one other one.
that plays Grand Theft Auto 3,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, my
awesome.
wife, I mean, she sees me playing and she's reading a book, and I go, okay, don't look. This is bad. What's going to happen here? People are running around on fire.
About ready to start a riot mission.
Yes, exactly. So, and of course, because of me, she's into a lot of the games now, a lot of the puzzle
That's great.
stuff, and she plays head-to-head. Actually, Aqua from 3DO was a good game. We liked playing that one. But let's see, what else was going on? I think I strayed from the 2600 stuff.
So
Let's
you
get back.
got back. You were at the 2600.
2600.
You were basically developing for that.
Yeah.
And you basically had free reign and were cracking the whip and working at the place for Atari.
It was great, and I'm looking at the
You
list.
got the name on the back of the cover.
Name in the
That's
back
where
of
we
the
left
box,
off.
and that was a great thing. I went into Gemco, which is Target now.
You did succeed in that.
Yeah, and Gemco, which is now Target in California. I was living right next door to it, and I walked into the store, and there I saw it for the first time on the shelf, and I was like, everything else got blurry, and it's just standard thing, and I just couldn't believe that I finally got something on the shelf, that I worked on.
What's that feel like? I mean, is that like? I write games myself, and I know what it's like to see somebody enjoy your product. I don't have a game on a shelf anywhere, but I know what that's like. Explain how that is for people who don't understand the concept of creationisms, of what that feels like.
It was like it was the epitome of completing it. It's like, this is finished, right? And there it is. It's going to just live on its own the way it is right now.
Right.
Hopefully it'll sell for a while, and it's just in a form where you can actually hold it and buy it. Up until that point, it was all EPROMs and all.
Well, yeah, did your family? You couldn't take that home? It's not like you're working at a game at work and you can bring a build home, show the family or something.
I did bring a lot of EPROMs home and play it and show them, so they saw the development of a lot of my stuff. And,
it's not like the internet where you could release an alpha and get feedback and stuff like that.
You're right. Yeah, no, it had to be rock solid because that was it.
Right.
You
don't have a
build
patch.
500,000 ROMs, or actually times 2 million ROMs, and it doesn't work. You're in trouble. But we tested the heck out of these things. I mean, it had to go through 15 signatures.
Wow.
The big deal at Atari is you didn't get your bonus until those 15 signatures were met. So
wow.
I had the list of all the lawyers within the company that had to sign it, Q&A, who had to make sure that it was within spec for the video tolerances of PAL and CCAM and all that stuff.
Wow. I've never heard about this.
Yeah, so I would drive early to work because I'm done with the game, and I don't like starting another game until I've rested a little bit and got my bonus check for the last one.
Right, exactly.
So I would just lean against the door, against the lawyer's office at Atari, and he'd go, "What are you doing there, Steve?" And I go, "I need you to sign this so I get my money." So I can work on the next game. Until I get these all signed, I can't work on the next game.
Right.
I just can't.
It can't be done.
It's not right. So I'd get it all signed. They give you the bonus check, my first bonus check. Thanks to Howard and Todd and Rob Zadibble, all those guys that saw the two companies form, Activision and iMagic, and they were, I'm sure getting ready to do their own, said, we got to come up with a bonus plan here. So they've got the story behind how that all happened, and I was able to go on to this plan, thank God. And so my first check, I was so nervous carrying it to the bank in my truck, driving there. I'm going.
Is it a number that you can disclose? I'm really curious because nobody's ever disclosed a number like that for us.
My first check, what the hell? I was $30,000 check.
Damn! But you were making salary along with that. That was your bonus?
Yeah.
Oh man! How could we have gone back then?
It's upfront. It was upfront royalty.
So basically, that was it. If the game sold a gajillion copies, you got no more. If it sold 10, you got no less.
But now with Taz, remember it was 1984. Was just coming out. I was done with it before that, but as it got released, it was getting ready for TV commercials and everything.
Right.
Commercials got canceled because the market just tanked. We had these really cool commercials. Apparently, I didn't see them, and so thank God I got the upfront royalty on it.
Now, Taz was, of course, a big licensed character.
Yeah, it happened because I originally just had a fork I was going to have getting food. And you move this fork around. I was like, well, I really like the Tasmanian Devil. So maybe, and we're owned by Warner, that should be very easy to deal with.
Oh,
right?
you were? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
At that time, it was all one normal company that we could all keep
I was
track
going to
of.
have you go through the concept of obtaining licenses or something like that. But
so it was basically, I said, you know what? I like the Tasmanian Devil. I'll put a little tornado in here, and it should be easy to get the license. And so this guy came down from Warner. He checked the game out. He goes, yeah, I like it. And I had it spelled Tazz.
Right.
And he goes, because I didn't want to say Tasmanian Devil, And
Right.
he goes, you know what? Let's pull one Z off.
Oh, Taz.
I go, cool. And that's how the word Taz, I still see it around now.
Oh, absolutely.
Came about.
Hey, that's his nickname.
So that nickname didn't exist before your...
You created that nickname.
Damn.
Wow.
I'm going to
I
touch
helped 1232.
you. No, I was going to say I'm going to touch you. Because you created the name of Taz. Thank you.
My wife loves Taz.
Everybody calls it Taz. It's like it'd be like inventing the term Mickey D's for McDonald's. It's the same sort of thing.
Well, I mean, the Warner guy did pull a Z off.
Right. Well, he gets partial credit for.
That's true.
That's.
Yeah. So, I feel kind of weird saying that, but that is actually how it came about. It's
That's
like
wild.
a big thing to claim right now, but.
I think that's a claim to fame.
Then you should have copyrighted it.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have to be going to interviews for games.
I didn't think about that. There's a lot of stuff I should have thought about.
So once he said, "Hey, I like it."
Yeah.
Did somebody come down, quality control style? I've always wondered how this works, but nobody from this generation of making games, I'm sure it's worse now. Basically, as soon as a license is, you're given the Omni-Domini to do that, somebody from the studio, somebody important, Spielberg or something, comes down and says, okay, if it's going to bear my name, Spielberg's ET or whatever.
I have fortunately never had a problem with
Never
licenses.
had that.
And the only licenses that I did, because I only wanted to do original games.
Of course.
But then you could also sense how your company wants to be able to leverage things and whatever. And and I did like the character, so it was like Warner. There was no problem. Like I said, the only thing, he came down, told me to pull one Z off. We had to test it another 200 hours because no matter what you changed, it was 200 hours of test. 1 dot, 1,000,000 dots, doesn't matter.
Interesting.
Then so Garfield.
That was King Features that you had
Jim Davis. So with Garfield, basically what happened there, I had just finished up Taz, and I like to look on the list to see what Atari wants, and I said, I think I saw it on the list, but I'm not sure. I go, I'd really like to do Garfield, and they go, well, I think we're in the process of trying to get a license agreement with the Pause Group, which is Jim Davis' company. Next thing you know, Jim Davis comes down to visit me, and I go, well, here's my design concept for the game. Nermal escapes as being babysat by Garfield, and the whole game is to go rescue Nermal. And he goes, oh, that's great. Let me see your last game. So I put Taz up there, and he just keeps playing it, and I'm like waiting for him to finish because I wanted to go over the concept.
You're talking about Garfield,
and he goes, sounds great, man. You know what you're doing. And I go, that's it?
That's it?
He goes, oh, yeah. I mean, we went into a meeting room so everybody could meet him and stuff. He had long hair, a ponytail at the time.
That's funny.
Great guy. And at that time, people smoked in the building, so he's there smoking. And he wrote on one of the Sunday comic books, a special edition of all the Sunday comics. I had it there with me, and he signed it. It says, thanks, Steve, in a bubble, with Garfield.
Look at Garfield on it.
It's the signature thing that my folks have, and it's like
that's wild.
My prized item,
It was that easy. I mean, United King Syndicate, or King Feature Syndicate, who owned like the publishing rights and all that stuff, they didn't.
No problem.
No, I find that amazing. It was that easy.
And then, in this day and age, he actually let it go as a released ROM right now for people. It's not finished, as you know. There's like I needed 3 or 4 months to finish it. It was going to be a 16 meg game. It was basically going to work kind of like Pitfall. You do stuff on each screen, snap to a new screen, and then I had these OD bonus waves that I was going to work on with a bunch of ODs. It was like a Garfield's nightmare kind of thing. And so there was no problem there with the license.
That's wild.
I've never had any license problems, but I don't like doing them unless I'm thinking, God, this would be a great tie-in.
Right. You'd be definitely opposed to, here's a license, make a game around it.
Can't stand that.
Most of your fellow alumni are the same way.
It's the game first, and that's,
Do you think that's a problem these days? You think that the game isn't coming first?
The game has to come first, and if it doesn't, it's lucky if it comes out playable. So basically, the reason why I like doing a game is I get an idea.
Right.
And that inspires me. to do all of the work necessary. Whereas if somebody came at me and said, "Here, do a licensed game," the inspiration's not coming from the right angle. So, and a lot of when you talk to a lot of these classic gamers that are on the they're working in console market now, they really don't like what they're doing because it's all disjointed and there's somebody in charge of what the game is, and they're not.
They're not.
And it's just
frustrating.
Once you've had a taste of that, it's hard to do it any other way.
We got our next interview coming up. Let's wrap up. Is there anything? What are you doing now? Is there other than your online
the Click 'em
games?
game thing? Basically, I'm doing another online game, and I'm able to actually do that, on my laptop and on my wife's system, so I don't have to be anywhere. I mean, my publisher's in Seattle.
Can
I'm
you
in
disclose who your
California.
publisher is? Is somebody we know?
Big Fish. Yeah, Big Fish Games.
Okay, it's Big Fish Games.
And the head guy there, Paul Thielen, was a guy that used to work at Real Arcade.
Okay.
And a really good guy. He's been really good to me. And so, yeah, I'm working with him. And I've actually talked to Tim Scully, who is an arcade guy. He did, Star Castle and all those Vector games.
Right.
So he seemed to be re-inspired about the fact that he can get back and do these one-man games, and so he's going to, I think, go off and try to do some stuff. And so I'm just hoping that a lot of these classic programmers can get back to building games.
I'm
they got
all
all
for
these
it.
guys walking around here. I'm going, I want to play your next game. I don't want to know that you're in charge of a video codec that runs on the PS2, managing a bunch of goops.
Yeah, I want to see a game.
That's me. So. I want to get back to the smaller stuff.
That's
stuff
great.
that doesn't take
Keep
more
us
than
in the
6
loop.
months.
Keep us in the loop.
Yeah.
We love stuff like this. Like I say, we write games under Dark Unicorn Productions label. So.
Oh, very cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. See what you think, because that's the kind of games we write, or the kind of games that you play and that you write. So.
Cool. I can't wait to see them.
Oh, this is Steve Woita.
Steve Woita.
Yeah. Here with Retro Gaming Radio at the Classic Gaming Expo 2003 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thanks so much, Steve, for coming by with us.
Hey, thanks for having me
so
here.
much for staying late. We really appreciate it.
All right, nice meeting you.
We'd like to thank Steve for giving us an interview at the Classic Gaming Expo 2003. We apologize for the delay in running the interview, but as you can probably tell, it was worth it. In the coming months, we're going to have more great interviews like Steve's from the Classic Gaming Expo 2004, so be sure to tune in the coming months. Not only do we have a huge show regularly, we also have a giant Bits and Bytes to run down for you this month. It's unbelievable how much stuff we've got here to talk about, so let's just get right to it. A little story I'm going to tell you. Bryan will probably cut this out and it'll probably end up on a disc, but I don't remember exactly how old I was. Old enough to know better, young enough to do it again, I guess is the expression. I remember begging my grandmother for a toy one year for Christmas. I wanted the toy so bad I could practically taste it. This toy, of course, was the Merlin. Anybody remember the Merlin other than me? Little red handheld game, ran on 29 AA batteries, looked like a futuristic telephone, had light-up LEDs all over it, played 6 games, right? You could make music and play it back. It had a tic-tac-toe game where you could play against the computer, right? Blackjack 13, a Mindbender one where you had to try to, remember or decode the sequence that it was thinking about. Great stuff. Anyway, I saw this on a commercial, didn't we all? This was Christmas time hype commercials here. I wanted it so bad I could taste it. And so I begged my grandma, and I knew Grandma was good for it. There's certain gifts that you could always ask for and you know you're going to get. And sure enough, when the box from Grandma's house arrived and all the presents were wrapped, one of them was oddly the shape of a Merlin box. So I was pretty sure we were good to go. And, of course, the daily ritual of touching your presents and shaking them and squeezing them and whatnot to make sure that what's in there is actually what you think is in there confirmed that I was pretty sure it was a Merlin. Of course, curiosity got the better of me that year, and I couldn't resist tearing just a little tiny corner of the paper, just enough to where I could confirm what was inside. And I could see the glowing letters at the bottom, and that was enough. I knew that I was getting the Merlin. So I just kind of folded it back down, right? I thought all was good. A couple days later, the ceremonial squeezing of the presents and shaking of the presents went down, and all of a sudden my Merlin box became squishy. I was rather stunned, but of course, to avoid guilt, I had to just pretend nothing happened. But every day I squeezed that damn box till Christmas, knowing damn good and well that what was in there was not in there anymore. Come Christmas time, Santa Claus came down the chimney, as he tends to do, and left some special presents. One of the presents was something I had not yet seen before under the tree. It was a big box addressed to my dad from Santa Claus. Well, the present opening happened. And I opened up my Merlin box, and being a Merlin box was good. Unfortunately, being squishy, it was not. I opened the Merlin box to reveal a set of pajamas, substituted for my Merlin thanks to my mother and dad, who knew what was going on the whole time. Now, that mysterious box under the tree to my dad, of course, was this unusual box with a free-floating Merlin dropped in it. Needless to say, the lesson was learned, and I no longer peeked at my Christmas presents. But it's one of those lessons that no matter how old you get, no matter how many Christmases come and go, you always remember it. So the Merlin has always had a special place in my heart. I actually own one of the original ones. It's kicking around here somewhere. But somebody wrote in and brought to our attention that there's a new Merlin release, slightly smaller than the original one, available apparently exclusively at Target at this moment in time. Available for pre-order, I suppose. Now, if you go to the link we give you, this Merlin is a hack. Not only do they seem not satisfied with destroying classic gaming as we know it, but instead of doing like Mattel did and releasing dot-by-dot perfect clones of their original handheld stuff, they decided that they were going to redesign it and put big, fat Fisher-Price buttons on it. Numbered 1 through whatever. Big buttons. It looks like a Fisher-Price toy. I am truly distraught that they've decided to re-release this thing and totally destroy the feeling and emotion that this particular toy had brought through. I don't understand how they release these toys that probably are very little interest to the modern generation, appeal to the old generation, and the old generation is going to want what they used to play with, not this weird stuff. I don't know. This just goes along with Jack's and Midway's Arcade Treasures and everything else. Attention to detail appears to be non-existent. In this case, it's not so much a matter of just some sound effects being wrong. They completely redesigned the damn thing. Okay, they put it in a red phone-looking thing. That's about it. Anyway, check it out, if nothing else, just to see what the atrocity is. Now, the next thing we got here is a G4 TV. Now, of course, G4 used to be the gaming network and Tech TV. Now they're just G4 TV, I guess, now. G4 Tech TV. And they actually were querying a lot of the classic gaming websites to have the webmasters comment on classic gaming being reborn into these new packages for the modern generation, which, of course, you know I completely went off on. And I had a very good discussion with the guy who wrote the article. I bring up a lot of good points that you've probably already heard, but it's nice to see it in another article. We'll post a link for you there. Game Not Over is the title of the article. We'll give you a link. Interesting stuff. It's of course, it strokes my ego, which so many of you probably think I've got a ton of ego in surplus here, but in all honesty, it's nice to see that other people on other websites, so I don't know these guys personally, also agreed in many cases with what I had to say. So it was kind of cool. Okay, what's next on the list? Ah, yes, the Convergence article. You know, I swear to God, if people would listen to the show more, they would have a better idea what they shouldn't be doing from a marketing perspective. This article, which comes from CNET, news.cnet.com, we'll post a link, of course, playing the Convergence game, starts off with video game consoles may well become the centerpiece of the digital entertainment experience in the home, but not this year. And the article goes on to talk about convergence and how Sony and Microsoft are dying to own your living room, and how basically consumers don't want it. Definitely an interesting article to read. Here's one little thing. Let's see, what was that good quote in here? There's some good stuff in here. Some analysts even wonder if the entire convergence idea really makes sense. Beyond the clock radio, what's ever worked better for putting two functions together? This was a market analyst at IDC. In fact, the new PlayStation PSX, which Sony has already released in Japan, combines a PlayStation 2, a DVD burner, a TiVo, which I'm sure is locked down so you can't do anything interesting with it. Apparently, it's went on sale late last year with Japan, and sales have been underwhelming. Well, there's no big surprise there. What you're asking people to do, folks, with convergence devices, or what I call integrated peripherals, integrated devices, integrated software. This is something I bitch about, I swear to God, every single month, and yet people continue to question whether or not this thing works. When you tell somebody, we're going to make a cell phone that's a video game, a camera, an MP3 player, and everything else in one, you're telling people that you want them to throw away anything that they have and replace it with this item. Aside from all the standard arguments that I've given you in the past, jack of all trades, master of none, all of the problems like what the N-Gage had, etc., etc., etc. You can go back and listen to the old shows. There's one other factor that people don't figure in here. When you ask somebody to buy an integrated device that has more than one function, you are asking them to throw away what they already have and probably love and use. If you try to sell somebody a PSX, right, you're telling them you don't need a DVD burner on your PC, you don't need your TiVo or your white box if you're like me and capture TV for free, and you need to throw away your PlayStation 2 and we'll replace it all with this one unit. Well, I've got all of those. I've got a DVD burner, a PlayStation 2, and a TiVo. Basically a TiVo. So what do you have to offer me? $1,000 price tag? Or are you going to give me a little bit more room in my entertainment center? I've already got it. If you're going to do a convergence device, you have to make a device that doesn't already have a solid market. Look at the concept of MP3s and cell phones. Right? Everybody's got a cell phone, and anybody who probably wants an MP3 player at this point in time has already gotten one. And if they already have one and don't like it, they want something that has, say, a 50 gig hard drive in it, right? Which a cell phone's not going to have. So you're asking them to not only throw away what they've got, but take a cut down from what they probably already have. We've already proven that cell phone gaming can't beat dedicated handhelds. Now, that may change, but it doesn't right now. So if you're asking me to buy a cell phone that has a game system built into it, instead of me letting me keep my existing cell phone and maybe sell me a new Nintendo DS, doesn't make sense. Oh, but it's the convenience factor. No, it's not. If you're traveling, bring your Nintendo Game Boy with you. If you're going to the airport, bring your Game Boy with you. If you're going on a trip, you bring your Game Boy with you. It's not like you're driving around in your car going to and from work and go, oh, well, I'm in a red light. I think I'll just whip out the Game Boy and start playing games. These are usually things that you make a plan for. All right? Cell phone plus camera. Okay, we're going to give you a really crappy 1-2 megapixel camera with no features. We're not going to give you the ability to do anything cool with it. We're not going to let you be able to do anything that the solid name brand cameras can do. Plus, we're not going to use the latest architectures. That costs too much. So we're going to give you 2-year-old camera technology in your cell phone and say, oh, you're going to bring that instead of your camera when you go on a vacation. Not true. You're asking me to spend more money for something I've already got that doesn't do as good of a job as what I already have. Okay? Convenience only works so far. 7-Eleven stays in business because people forget to stop at Safeway and get a gallon of milk on the way home, so they pay $5 a gallon for it at 7-Eleven. That works out. That's a totally different story than these convergent devices. Okay? Mark my words. Convergence is not what people are looking for. People are looking for strong solo-type product. Yes, you can combine some things. Does it make sense to combine your PDA and your cell phone? Absolutely makes sense, right? Because anytime, anywhere, you might need a PDA. You might need to look up somebody's phone number, right? You may need to look up somebody's address. But do you need to whip out a Game Boy and play a game if you're not expecting to be playing games? You follow what I'm going? I don't understand why this is such a difficult thing to get a grasp on, and why these people continue to produce all-in-one products. I honestly can't believe that the all-in-one copier, scanner, fax machine thing actually made it. You can pick those up for $110 now at Costco. They suck. If any part of it breaks, it's cheaper to throw it away than to repair it. But it's gotten so cheap that people don't care if one of the pieces breaks and they have to throw it all away, right? So, but the problem is you're talking about locking people into something that's not just a passing fancy. I mean, if people are diehard gamers, people are diehard TV captures, people are diehard DVD burners, you're asking them to take a step down from what they're used to. That's just not going to work. Mark my words. None of this stuff's going to work. Okay, that's enough ranting and raving about that one. Here's a little something on the who gives a rat's ass pile for us to talk about this month. A little company, which I'm going to probably not pronounce right, Aruze, maybe? A-R-U-Z-E, is developing Linux-based arcade boards. Just to give you, I'll just read part of this here to you. It's not a very long article, and I'm going to post a link. Japanese game manufacturer announced it has created a new arcade board named AP3, which will be the first arcade board to operate on the Linux operating system. Okay. The company expects the adoption of Linux to cut development costs for software developers since the open source software is available for free under GPL. They've also cited the system's high versatility and consistent updates as a factor in its decision. This is kind of a double-edged sword here, people. First of all, arcade games don't run on operating systems. Okay, that's the first thing that everybody needs to realize. If you're not an arcade operator, okay, there have been a couple of OS-based games, right, that use IBM-style, PC-style, Intel-style hardware, all right? However, I don't know of any video game yet that runs on Windows, which is the most popular operating system on the planet. I don't know of any video game system or video arcade game that runs on the BOS. I don't know any machine that runs on Java. I don't know any machine that runs on Linux. Okay? So this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. All right, now maybe I'm wrong. If somebody else out there knows about arcade machines, arcade cabinets that are based on standard common consumer operating systems, let me know. Honestly, because of what I've heard, now that's just what I'm thinking out loud here. I'm just saying, right? That the PlayStation 2 uses a Linux development kit. Am I right? And what does everybody bitch about the Linux development kit for PS2? PS2 is a pain in the ass to develop for, right? So, what are you thinking? The concept of cut development costs for software developers. Okay, and I noticed it didn't say anything about making it easier to make games, right? And let's be honest, that's what this market's about, is making games, making good games, fun games. Anybody who's ever developed for a system they're unfamiliar with or that's hard to develop for will understand the limitations of what it takes to move to a new platform and create something that's compelling and that people want to play. I don't necessarily think this is the right way to go. It's a nice thought. I'm glad that somebody over in Japan loves Linux enough to build an arcade board around it. So it's got a hard drive hanging off of it or what? I don't know. Interesting to see what's going on. I think it would make more sense to put an Xbox in an arcade cabinet, as much as I hate the Xbox, but to put an Xbox in the arcade cabinet makes more sense. Because everyone's developing for that damn thing because they can port their crappy PC games over to it. Right? It makes total sense. The concept, this is like a fanboy doing this. Fanboy, somebody who was in a position of power, one day booted up Gen 2 and said, oh, this is the future, man. This is so cool. And then he goes into the boardroom or whatever and says, hey, from now on we are adopting Linux, and that's just the way it is. No discussion. Make it happen. Make it so, number one. Right? That's what it sounds like to me. But what do I know? What do I know? Ah, yes, this is going to be one of my favorite ones. From Yahoo News, the title of the article is Plugged In, Video Games Too Expensive, Rent Online. Okay, now, first couple paragraphs here. Parents, know this about your college-bound children. They're going to party as hard as possible, and if they could major in video games, they would. But with new games costing up to $50 each, few students, and few young adults for that matter, can afford to buy them, which is why a number of companies do what Netflix did for DVDs and bring game rentals to the masses. All right, pretty much everybody knows what Netflix is, right? You pay X number of dollars a month, and for that period of time, you can rent, in quotes, as many as you like for that monthly period of time. Now, if you do the math, All right, and I'm sure I've talked about this on another show, but just in case I haven't, if you do the math, depending on where you're located, okay, people need to look at this really closely. Let's look at the Netflix model. 3 movies out at a time for $22 a month. Okay? Now, based on mailing turnaround times, they actually send them to your house, and you send them back, and then they send you more. I'd have to do the math again, but I've already figured this out once. How many movies you have to get to cover what you would pay to go out and rent? If you're going to get 3 movies out at a time, you're going to pick movies you're not going to normally rent, right? You're going to pick stuff, well, I was thinking about seeing that, and as long as it's free, which is what you're thinking, as long as it's free, I'll go ahead and watch that. But if you were a little more discerning about what you watched and did a little research ahead of time and did the good consumer thing and decided what movies you really wanted to see and which ones you didn't, and you rented from Blockbuster, you went down to the local place, picked it up, whatever, you would probably find out that you're not saving any money. All right? Now, let's look at video games. Now, there's a difference between 3 out at a time, which really makes that $22 easier to swallow, versus 1 at a time. Now, the last time I looked, again, please, somebody let me know if I'm wrong. Last I checked, these places allowed 1 out at a time for your cash, which is the same basic $20 a month. Now, you got to figure out how many games. If you can rent a game at your local mom and pop store for $2.99, right? If you could rent that for $2.99, how many would you have to rent to be able to break even on that amount? Now, a lot of people say, yeah, but you can keep it as long as you want. There's no late fees. Stop being lazy. All right? We're just talking about it from a financial point of view, which is the core of this article here. I'd also like to point out that in conjunction with our rant today, talking about how time is a value-added property, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. Now, if you could have 3 games out at a time, that might make a little more sense. But then someone's going to say, well, how many games can you play at one time? Right? Well, how many movies can you watch at one time? All right? So I want people to think about this sort of thing. This also leads us to another problem. If you have noticed in recent times, the DVD market for rentals has slightly altered itself thanks to online rentals and the power of big chains like Blockbuster. Let's think carefully about this one. I'm just going to give an example, and I don't need any flack about this, especially from my producer. If you were to go out and rent Wonder Woman, the entire first season from Netflix, they have a special rental version of Wonder Woman. Did you know that? I did not know that. In fact, when I got my first disc in the mail, it said, oh, by the way, even though the menus say that the other episodes are on the other side of the disc, there's not. There's only one side. And if you look at the disc, it says, intended for rental only. Here's what they did. They took, 3 discs and broke it into 5. Why? Duh. To make you rent more. Right? They're stripping the value add because of the popularity of rentals. Now, you're thinking, well, that'll never happen to video games. Come on. Oh, trust me. It'll happen. Oh, it'll happen. It may not be exactly the same way, but it'll happen. Okay? The rental window for DVDs was a useful thing. Because if any of you were movie collectors back in the old days, VHS used to retail for $109 per tape when a movie first came out. $109. You know why they did that? So that rental companies wouldn't lose revenue to you going out and buying the tape. If the tape was $14.95, and you could go out and buy it for $14.95, you're not going to really necessarily want to spend the $5 to rent it. When for a little bit more, you could own it. Right? Well, this price protection window went on forever. Now, DVDs, DVDs escaped that. I don't know how. Somebody sold their soul to Satan twice to say, please don't let DVDs become price protected for rental companies. And believe it or not, it worked. You can go out and buy a brand new movie for $14.95 on sale. You can pay the same basic price as the rental companies do. Of course, they get bulk discounts, but, the price is the same. If you want to own, you can own. There's no price window stopping you from doing so. Now, anytime big money is seen, they're always trying to find out how to make more, right? That's the way of corporate America. All right, so wouldn't it be prudent to think that maybe if renting video games got really popular, that ownership window might happen again? How would you like to see direct-to-rental video games? Oh, you think it's bad enough that you can't buy Outlaw Golf for the PlayStation 2, providing you're in America? We're the only place where you can't get it on the PlayStation 2. How would you like to know that Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was a rental-only title? How would you like to know that? It's available for rent October 1, not available for purchase till December 25th. Oh, would that piss you off? It should. People got to think about this stuff. These things bother the crap out of me because I swear to God I'm the only person that ever sees this stuff. I mean, this stuff jumps out at me. There's also another problem here. Movies are a finite time frame, right? A movie will last an hour and a half. If you watch the extras, maybe a couple more. Let's say that you rent a movie. There's a 2-hour commitment on the movie, probably at most, right? For most people. A video game has a higher commitment time, say 25 hours, such as what they recommend for Doom 3 to play it through, right? Well, consider that as well in this whole thing. Does it make sense to give you more value in a rental product than it does to not give you the value and make you keep it longer? I'm just saying. I'm talking out loud here. Heaven forbid someone's going to say, oh, you're just talking out of your ass. Every time you're talking out of your ass, it comes true. You know, I'm not saying everything I say comes true, but I've got a pretty good track record if you listen to the old shows. Something to think about. I'm not a big fan of rental. I'm a big fan of demos, right? I like having demo discs. I think that makes good sense. Rental? I think that the rental industry is gearing up to start ass raping us people. Watch for it. See if I'm right. All right, what do we got next here? Oh, man, the decline of video gaming movie. Oh, people, you have got to go watch this. This is awesome. I'm going to provide a link. Decline of video gaming movie. I was dying. I mean, this is actually classic stuff here. You guys need to watch this. This is what I've been talking about all this time. It's nice to see that somebody else sees it my way and actually goes out to make an entertaining medium of it other than myself. Check it out. This is a funny movie. It's worth your time. Ah, yes, right from the hot media shelf. I love this these headlines are what really make these stories work. Sheriff says 4 charged in Florida killings over Xbox. Yeah, see, anytime I can get Xbox get negative press, this is great. Sheriff Ben John said the murder was organized by a man who was angry because he believed his Xbox video game system, and some clothes, had been stolen. Now, that's priceless, man. I mean, you know, I'd almost say that Microsoft was paying this stuff to happen because there's no such thing as negative publicity. I don't care what you say. Grand Theft Auto created an enterprise based on negative publicity. Kill Haitians, right? So this is just great stuff. Like I said, I'd say Microsoft was paying people to kill people, but that'd be kind of gauche, right? So I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is I think it's funny, and I'll post a link to the article. It's not funny that somebody was killed, but it is funny that Xbox was the forerunner reason why this guy killed people. Too funny. All right, what's next on the list here? Let's see. Oh, yes. The Olympics arrive for the PlayStation. Yeah, this is something somebody, I believe, sent in. And this is just basically saying that the Olympics are going to be available. Athens 2004 is the name of it for PlayStation 2. This brings back old school days, folks. Remember track and field where you smack the buttons faster and faster and faster? Yeah, that's back. Only this time you get to spend $40 for it in living 3D, and it basically reduces you down to track and field. This is great stuff here. You have to, I swear, this is like a perfect knockoff of track and field. You guys got to read the article. I'm not going to talk a lot about it because I care about the Olympics almost as much as I care about Xbox. But this is funny stuff here. All you have to do is look at this and just think track and field or think summer games, and you'll get a huge chuckle out of it. Yes, here's another little article here about Acclaim, once a strong, huge name in the market of video gaming. Many of you may even remember Acclaim from way back when, as publishers of, like, say, Mortal Kombat 2 on the Genesis, right? Apparently, Acclaim is just closing offices at an enormous rate. One source says that it's almost over for Acclaim, and that's kind of sad, you know. I'd say it'd be like Electronic Arts closing down, but I don't think too many tears would be shed about Electronic Arts. But Acclaim has always been one of those names that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of reverent. At least it was to me. It's like Accolade. It's like when Accolade got acquired or sold out or whatever, because Accolade was a name that goes way back. You know, you think about it fondly. You know? I don't know. But anyway, I'll send you a little article here if you're interested. Check it out. For you Nintendo whores out there, there's a little something new coming to Game Boy Advance. Mario versus Donkey Kong. Now, you know, I'm not sure I can handle any more Mario and Donkey Kong. I think I Mario'd and Donkey Kong'd out. After years of apparent goodwill, Mario and Donkey Kong are at it again, this time on Game Boy Advance. Donkey Kong has stolen all the mini Mario toys from the Mario Toy Company. Now it's up to Mario to hunt down his longtime nemesis and retrieve the pilfered goods. He'll race through confounding levels, finding keys, releasing mini Marios before time runs out. Along the way, he'll master new moves in order to scale the puzzling heights of 6 action-packed worlds. Well, you know, a lot of people have said good things about this game. And I took a look at it, and it was entertaining for 1 or 2 screens. But after that, it just, I don't know. I'll send you guys a link, of course, as always, and check it out, see what you think. I'd be curious what other people think about it. To me, this looks like icon whoring, and we're just, you know, milking the name and the property down. I mean, it's smooth, it's clean, the graphics are good, which I guess is what really sells the game now, but at the same time, it's like the levels just kind of get old, you know? So, I don't know. But anyway, I'd like some feedback, other people, what you guys thought about that, and we'll give you a link, you can check it out. Hey, yet we have another video game-related casualty. Murder by PlayStation case takes a new twist. UK police find Rockstar's action game manhunt in the victim's home. The basic idea here is somebody was murdered, right? And they think that Manhunt was responsible for it. But here's what's funny. The guy that did it isn't the one who had the game, it's the victim that had it. Now, what's that all about? Right? Once again, it's the standard, you know, media twist on it. I don't even mind PlayStation taking a hit for this because the media just cracks me up, man. I don't know. I just have a great time watching every ill of the planet being marked down to video games. But you know what? Just a little side note here while we're talking about, you know, murders and whatnot being related to video games. We've gotten off pretty light. I mean, the last time that, you know, there was a really big stink about video games, I mean, really a big stink. I'm not talking about the occasional kill the Haitians and things like that. Those are incidental. But the last time we had a really big stink about video games was Night Trap, right? When Captain Kangaroo goes on the show and says, Night Trap is caca, you know. Let's ask Mr. Green Jeans. Mr. Green Jeans, you play Night Trap last night? Too funny. But, no, but seriously, I mean, the last time we had a really big video game controversy was over Night Trap. And what's funny is Night Trap didn't even warrant the controversy. I mean, if you ask the senators who were bashing Night Trap, it was like, you kill girls. No, you don't. Did you even see the game? It's like watching people argue with Michael Moore about Fahrenheit 9/11. They say the movie's crap, and he looks at him and says, well, did you watch it? Well, no, but I don't have to watch it. Well, shut the hell up then. Don't be bashing on Night Trap if you never played the thing. All right, you play it when you're a cup of tea, whatever, fine. But you don't go on there and say, you know, you kill innocent girls. That's the point of the game. Well, okay, so in Manhunt, yeah, okay, so the point of the game is to kill people. But you know what? They're not innocent. They're henchmen. They're going to kill you anyway, right? I look at it as self-defense. But if you think about it, we really haven't had a big uproar in terms of, ban the video games. Once a year, the Parents for Kids anti-video game research facility comes out and sends out a bunch of letters and tries to make the media aware. But we're getting to the point now where if you look at like Mortal Kombat, the latest one they just put out, I can't think of the subtitle of it now, but look at the new Mortal Kombat. The 3D's getting pretty good and gruesome. I mean, there's blood splattering against the camera and everything, but yeah, I guess we're getting attuned to that. So, anyway, I just had to take that little side segue there. There's a scary trend coming, people. There's a very scary trend. I want everybody to just stop what you're doing, because a lot of people listen to this in the background. I want you all to stop and think for a minute what's going on in corporate America right now. All right? I've talked about this, but I want everyone to think really tight about this. It's getting more and more that one or two companies are owning more than you know. Like one company owns like Taco Bell, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pepsi. I mean, if you look at it, if you look at who owns who, things start to get a little bit scary. Now, I don't know about you. Now, I bitch about Microsoft all the time. I'm going to let them off the hook here because we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about the assimilation of the free world, all right, into a few small organizations. That's not helpful, folks. I want you guys to pay really close attention to what's going on. IDOS, which is the company that produced like Tomb Raider, right? They were a big name for quite a while. They are in preliminary discussions for a takeover, and I'm going to give you a link, of course. They're saying that Activision Electronic Arts are the most likely buyers. Now, this stuff's getting kind of spooky here, folks. Electronic Arts has already bought up most of the good original game houses. Of course, I don't know where the original games are. What's Bullfrog put out lately, right? Or Orion. But anyway, not Orion, Origin. What am I thinking? It's getting too late in the day for this stuff. Anyway, so we're getting to the point to where there's going to be like 10 companies that own everything. That's not good. I mean, I don't care if you don't care about who's president next 4 years. You don't care what's on television. You don't care that our world's falling to hell in a handbasket. But these are the sort of things you need to pay attention to. Okay? This is the sort of thing that everybody should care about. We are seeing a trend, people, and it's not a good trend. What can we do about it? I don't know. For once, I'm going to bitch without offering a solution. But there's got to be something you can do. There's got to be something we can do collectively to stop this monopolizing, this buy-up, and all this other stuff. Everybody wants to be bought out by Microsoft, but does everybody want Microsoft to own everything? I don't think so. I mean, even if you like Microsoft, you still have to see the problem with one company owning everything. All right? Not a good thing. This article just respawned in me the thought about how many things are owned by a single person, a single entity, a single company. It's scary. It's a scary thing. I don't like it. Oh, we get a little more information about the Sony PlayStation Portable. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but something in particular that I want to bring up. They're using a 333 megahertz processor, dedicated media processor, 3D graphics engine, and a processor specifically designed for security. Now, this sort of thing should freak you out, folks. They're actually getting to the point now where they're actually putting dedicated hardware in for security. What does this mean? I don't know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, if you're a legitimate user, why should you care? You should care. You know why? Security is not just about piracy. Security is about dictating to you content. Right? Now, they say in this article, and you can read it for yourself. I'm not going to go into great detail here. But they say that the primary codec of this thing to watch movies is MPEG-4 H.264 codec, which is good. That's a good thing. MPEG-4 is an open system that, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. But that does also, it says that it has a 24-bit programmatic data path to allow it to cope with other audio and video codecs, although it primarily uses MPEG-4. What does this mean? This probably means no MP3 out of the box. This probably means no MP3 that's not digitally locked down. right? If they care enough, okay, let me just paint this little rosy picture here for you. If they care enough to put a dedicated piece of hardware to thwart piracy, and I'm assuming for DRM, all right, you ain't going to put anything on there they don't want you to put on there. And what does that mean? That means when Sony has their own iTunes, you're not going to be able to be a member of iTunes and download songs to this machine. You're going to have to use Sony Tunes, S-Tunes, to download. You're not going to be able to plug this thing into your USB port and drop MP3s on it or movie files on it, right? You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to repurchase movies in MPEG-4 format. No, you can't do them yourself. That wouldn't work out. Instead, you need to run it through our little converter program to put that on there, all right? This lockdown thing is going too far. You know, we've had dedicated hardware security before. Slapstick, for example, it was a video game protection for arcade games, where it was like this little chip encased in solid carbonite, you know, that you couldn't get into. Find Han Solo at the bottom if you did, but you couldn't get into, and if you did, you'd basically destroy the chip, which is how they kept you from pirating the ROMs. For example, Arcade Operator 2 has Gauntlet 2, Arcade Operator 1 has Gauntlet. We'll copy the Gauntlet 2 ROMs and give them to Arcade Operator 1, so he doesn't have to pay for it. They made hardware protection for that. There's some kind of scary stuff about the PlayStation Portable. You know, again, it remains to be seen, but the things that I'm seeing here, right, it uses 1.8 gigabyte optical disc system, dubbed Universal Media Disc, which already means you ain't making your own discs for it, right? So that pretty much, locks a lot of things out for you, having that sort of a screen, having that much processing power eats the crap out of batteries, all right? The display, the CD mechanism. I'm telling you, this thing is not going to get the battery life they're talking about. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to go into it, and I lied, and I got into it anyway. But anyway, take a look at it. I'd be really curious to see how well this thing pulls off. Along with our convergence products, this is trying to be a convergence product, and I don't think it's going to work out. But again, what the hell do I know? I know nothing. What else we got here on the little miscellaneous shelf? We're almost done here, people. We'll get on with the rest of the show. Joseph Russo, or Russo, didn't get a clarification on how to present his name there. Nickname Vince scanned in a bunch of electronic game magazines. Yes, the ones that we interviewed, Bill Kunkel and everybody. Yeah, those. He's sending us over, or he has sent us over, 2 game magazine scans. He did all the scanning work himself. And Bryan said he's being a slacker and hasn't made them available for downloading yet, but will soon. Again, until somebody tells us we can't do it, we're providing mini magazine scans of classic magazines for you, our Studio Pass holders. So we want to thank Joseph for providing those, and we should get those up soon when Bryan has the time to make them available. Well, that's about it, folks. Of course, Jerry Corcoran submitted a bunch of stuff this month, and everybody else who I might have missed. I don't think so. Most of this was in-house this month, but please, we look at all the submissions. If you submit us something, we'll look at it for inclusion on the show, and of course, we'll give you credit where credit's due. Whew, that was one long Bits and Bytes. Let's get on with the rest of the show. This month's Retro Gaming Radio Insider segment will be on the Magnavox Odyssey 2. Now, a lot of people have heard of this obscure machine. Some of you may have even played it. Some of you may even still own one. But for most people, the Odyssey 2 is sort of a mystery machine. As popular as it was something that a lot of people don't remember. It never quite got the press of the 2600 or the ColecoVision or even the Intellivision. But Magnavox started the video game revolution in 1972 with the release of the original Odyssey, the world's first home video game system. For the next 5 years, the company released a number of standalone consoles in the Odyssey line, giving them numeric suffixes like Odyssey 100, 400, and so on. And finally, in 1977, Magnavox signaled a new generation of Odyssey by announcing the Odyssey 2, a dedicated unit that was to contain 24 games and accommodate 4 simultaneous players.
However, the bottom was quickly dropping out of the oversaturated dedicated console market, and Magnavox scrapped the 24-game Odyssey 2 in favor of an expandable cartridge-based model. The company released it in 1978, touting it as the ultimate computer video game system. Now, the Odyssey 2 supported one-channel sound. Its graphics consisted primarily of small characters built from its internal ROM code, which gave almost all the games a very similar appearance, i.e. blocks, and more blocks. Its maximum screen resolution was smaller and its player sprites larger than other comparable systems, giving most of its games that blocky look. However, Odyssey 2 graphics were sharp, and its animation was fluid with no trace of screen flicker, which was seen on many of the competing consoles. Atari 2600, Pac-Man, Atari 2600. The Odyssey 2 also contained Intel's very first mass-market processor, the 8048. Speaking of which, let's look at the specs real quick on the... this is a good time to talk about this. This is the Intel 8048 8-bit processor, 1.78 megahertz speed demon, 64 bytes, that's bytes, not megabytes, of RAM, 1K ROM, 16 color palette, 4 maximum on the screen, 1 color per sprite, wow, 8x8 sprite size, damn, what the hell can you do with that? 12 max sprites on the screen at a time, and of course mono sound. Whew, demon powerhouse unit. But the Odyssey 2 had one significant advantage over other systems, a built-in 49-key membrane keyboard. Coming at the beginning of the home computer revolution as it did, the keyboard was a strong selling point for the console, amazingly enough. Ads for the Odyssey 2 exclaimed, "The keyboard is the key," referring to its potential for the increased game options, educational software, yada, yada, yada. The keyboard primarily appealed to parents because it could be used for educational games, of which the Odyssey 2 has several. The keyboard was also used for game selection, game configuration, programming mazes, and entering names or initials for high scores. That's pretty cool. The Odyssey 2's joysticks consisted of a large box-like base that can be held in one hand or placed on a tabletop. The stick is a slim silver metal shaft tipped... yeah, I said metal shaft. Tipped with a plastic knob. Cool. Each joystick supports one fire button labeled Action. Odyssey 2 joysticks were responsive, fairly well constructed, and generally well liked. For those of you who may have trouble imagining what this looks like, kind of imagine the old analog Apple II joysticks. That's what they always reminded me of. Unfortunately, on most models of the console, the joysticks were plugged in inside of the unit. This not only meant that broken joysticks could not be easily replaced outside of a Magnavox service center, but that customized controllers and other input devices were impractical. In the United States, the Odyssey 2 managed to achieve a moderate level of success, at least in its early years. By the early 1980s, however, it had fallen behind sales of the Atari 2600 and Mattel Intellivision. It was basically the third-place system of the 1980s. Well, yeah, third place. Probably the most interesting thing about Odyssey 2 software is about half of the games were written by one guy. The guy's name was Ed Averitt, whatever, same guy. I'm sure he'd be happy if he could hear the show. He was a former Intel salesman, hence the Intel chip in the unit, who started writing Odyssey 2 games after the other Magnavox designers started running out of ideas. He wrote 24 games in 4 years. That's impressive. He's been interviewed extensively in the Halcyon days, a collection of interviews with classic game programmers. I have to try to see if we can get him on the show. That'd be interesting. Casey Munchkin. Oh boy, the best known Odyssey 2 game is Casey Munchkin. It was designed to play like Pac-Man, but to be different enough not to violate any copyright laws. Of course, Magnavox was sued anyway by Atari, who owned the home rights to Pac-Man, because Casey beat Atari's port of Pac-Man to the market and was selling pretty well to boot. Well, honestly, I could pretty much write my ass in assembler and get a better game than Pac-Man on the 2600. But, good visual, huh? The first ruling by the federal court of Chicago ruled that Casey Munchkin had not violated any copyright laws since the code was all original. But there were significant creative differences, and that no one would ever be able to buy Casey and not think he was buying Pac-Man. Magnavox exulted after the favorable ruling, and was prepared to redouble their efforts in selling video games. Atari appealed the decision, but Magnavox's legal department felt that the lower court's ruling was so strong and the case was so solid that Atari had no chance. However, the appeals court overturned the decision, Atari won, and Magnavox's plans to dominate the market never came to fruition. Magnavox had to stop selling Casey Munchkin, which severely hurt the company because the game had made more money in 2 months than any other Odyssey game had made in a year. The short-lived success of Casey, which did seem to inspire Magnavox, and North America's Philips, Magnavox's parent. However, the appeal court overturned the decision, Atari won, and Magnavox's plans to dominate the market never came into fruition. Magnavox had to stop selling Casey Munchkin, which severely hurt the company because the game had made more money in 2 months than any other Odyssey game had made in a year. The short-lived success of Casey Munchkin did seem to inspire Magnavox, however, and they proceeded to create many of the best Odyssey games from that time forward, like Killer Bees, Turtles, Casey's Crazy Chase, and Attack of the Time Lord. There were very few third-party Odyssey 2 games, the only licensees being Parker Brothers and Imagic. Since Odyssey 2 market share was much smaller than that of other systems, third-party developers did not exactly jump at the chance to develop games for it. Parker Brothers did not even release its Odyssey 2 games in the United States due to the system's smaller market. Imagic did, however, release their popular Demon Attack and Atlantis games in the U.S. The Odyssey 2's most original achievement was the release of the Master Strategy series of games. These were special expanded memory cartridges which incorporated game boards, keyboard overlays, and playing pieces into their gameplay. The results were 3 engrossing games with a unique style of play that hasn't really been duplicated anywhere else. The Master Strategy games are The Quest for the Rings, Quest of the World, and The Great Wall Street Fortune Hunt. A fourth Master Strategy game, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, was programmed but never released. The other notable Odyssey 2 game series, the Challenger series, consists of several arcade-style action games. Together, the Challenger and Master Strategy series comprise the best the Odyssey 2 has to offer. In the late 1990s, John Donzilla released the first homebrewed Odyssey 2 game, Amok. It's a Berserk clone and available on his website, along with an excellent Odyssey 2 multi-cart. We'd like to talk, too, about what the Odyssey 2 came out. We'd like to talk about how other consoles came out in other countries under weird different variants, and some of the extra goodies that came out for it, the accessories. North American Philips bought up Magnavox in 1980. They were a Dutch electronics conglomerate. Philips released a European equivalent of the Odyssey 2 called the VideoPack G7000 under its own company name. The Philips VideoPack G7000 was more successful than its American counterpart. There are many versions of the game around the world, and one version even has a built-in monitor, interestingly enough. The G7000 inspired a larger following and enjoyed a longer lifespan in Europe than Odyssey 2 ever had in the U.S. As a result, more games were created for the European market. If anything, the console enjoyed an even greater following when it was released in Brazil, where it was simply called the Odyssey. Brazil was treated to practically the entire release of both the U.S. and the European market, and even received a couple of exclusive titles, Clay Pigeon and Commando Noturno, as well. There you have it. Accessories. Ah, yes, the accessories. Not too many accessories, let's be honest here, folks. There were only actually 2. First, of course, the voice module. The most significant accessory for the Odyssey 2 was the voice, a module which added voice and sound to certain games. The most famous voice game was Type and Tell, a cartridge which phonetically pronounced, at least tried to, any word that the player typed in. Of course, most players spent countless hours typing in certain 4-letter words that I'd repeat here if we weren't PG-13. In other games, the voice shouted out encouraging phrases after successful play, insults when a player screwed up, etc., etc. There were a couple of educational games, Sid the Spellbinder and Nimble Numbers Ned, say that 10 times fast, were released for use with the voice module as well. Heck, I think they made more voice module games than Intellivision did. Dope! The voice module never made it outside of the United States, however. Europeans were treated to 2 add-on modules that were not available in other parts of the world. These accessories include the VideoPack Chess module, which was a cartridge with an attached computer module because the G7000 didn't have enough memory on its own to run a chess game. There was the Home Computer module, an add-on which allowed VideoPack owners to program in Microsoft's BASIC languages. Although this module was not released outside of Europe, Odyssey 2 owners could purchase a computer intro cartridge to program in assembly language. For those of you who have not endured pain and suffering, you could program in assembler. Finally, the Odyssey Command Center, or the G7400. 1983, the introduction of the next generation system, coupled with the fading of video game markets in general, pretty much put an end to the Odyssey 2. Philips announced they'd be developing their own next generation 8-bit system, codenamed Odyssey 3, and later dubbed the Odyssey Command Center. The Command Center was to have more memory, better graphics, and a redesigned, more computer-like keyboard. Great. That's what we need. A voice synthesizer and a 300 baud modem were to be in the planning stages, and it was shown at the 1983 Consumer Electronics Show. If any of you guys out there have pictures from that, I'd love to see that. It was also to be fully backward compatible with the Odyssey 2. Well, there's something good there. And it would play specifically enhanced versions of certain Odyssey 2 titles. That sounds familiar. Where have I heard that before? Unfortunately, it was never released. At least that's what most Americans thought until 1995, when an American game collector discovered that a redesigned Command Center and a handful of cartridges had been released and sold for a limited time in 1983. It was sold only in Europe. It was called the Philips Video Pack Plus G74000. Can they make the name a little longer, please? Thank you. It was never very popular, and as a result, the G7400 is very difficult to find today. Online commerce sites like eBay have made them less hard to come by than they once were, however. Philips Slant Magnavox did not get into video game business again until after the release of the Philips Slant Magnavox did not get into the video game business again until the release of the CDI, Compact Disc Interactive, in 1992. Marketed as a multimedia entertainment device with games, interactive movies, and the like, the system did not seem to do anything particularly well. Game consoles had better games, computers had better reference and educational titles, and you could watch movies still better elsewhere, and never gained a foothold in the market. By the time it was discontinued, CDI had lost millions of dollars. No, duh. We're gonna look at the CDI in a future show. You're gonna love that. Emulation. There is only one. Can you believe that? There's only one. Odyssey 2 emulator available. O2EM, developed by Dan Boris, who is, or at least was, a huge contributor to the MAME team. O2EM development was recently taken over by Andre Dalla Roca, who has enhanced the emulator's capabilities and even added support for the European G7400 games. Odyssey 2 games are available from the Game Vault, and we will provide you with a link. I did not have an Odyssey 2, folks. This is sort of where my notes run out here. I did not have an Odyssey 2. I did know somebody who did have an Odyssey 2. And I will admit, we had a lot of fun playing it. The games were actually fun. That's always a big plus. Again, this was sort of the beginning of visuals sort of had to own before people would get into it. And I think a lot of people were turned off by the very large, blocky look of it. But overall, I thought the Odyssey 2 was pretty cool. Of course, the keyboard was useless and the controllers were kind of daft. But when it boils down to what's important, which is the gameplay, it had some good stuff in it. Casey Munchkin owned. If you still have not played Casey Munchkin, go get the emulator. Go get the Casey Munchkin ROM somewhere. Of course, you'll buy the cartridge, right? In 24 hours, so you'll have to erase it. Go and check it out, because Casey Munchkin it's an important title. It's one of those titles that I feel was significant in the past. We've talked about that before. Life-changing titles. Well, Casey Munchkin was one of those market-changing titles. As we read about, it pretty much carried Magnavox for several months before they pulled it. Who knows? If Casey Munchkin had not been pulled, who knows where we'd be today, right? Maybe, no, we'd all be using CDIs. Heaven forbid. Anyway, that's kind of a wrap-up of the Odyssey 2. Casey Munchkin, of course, was the game to play. I never got to play any of these other cool, extravagant games with the boards and the pieces and the expansion cartridges. My friends weren't that rich, but still, it's worth going back and taking a look at. I think the Odyssey 2 was a significant contender, and it's always important to have significant contenders in the past. Even if you're number 3, it's still nice to have a third place. Fortunately, Nintendo's figuring that out these days. Anyway, that's the Odyssey 2 from Magnavox, Slant Philips. There's an emulator available, O2EM. Check it out. And we're going to take a look at a new machine next month on the Retro Gaming Radio Insider segment. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up the September 2004 edition of Retro Gaming Radio, our first show, broadcast year 2005. Very special thanks to all of our listeners that came to visit us at the Classic Gaming Expo 2004 at our Retro Gaming Radio booth. Very special thanks to the whole CGE staff for letting us go into the alumni dinner, for helping us out when we had sound problems, for their endless support of the show. And special thanks, of course, goes to speedhost.com, your premier host. If you need web hosting, see speedhost.com. They've done very well by us. We really appreciate all of their devotion to the show. Tune in next month when we will have more exciting goodies right here on Retro Gaming Radio. And as always, until next time, keep it retro.